Ladies and gentlemen, capital G here, bringing you Aminatou, the Fateshifter. This is an update from episode 6. I've been running Aminatou as like one of my staple commanders for a couple of years now, ever since the 2018 Commander product. And this version is going to be a little more refined, and it should also be a much cleaner video than what I did previously. So let's dive in and see what we can do with Aminatou. So of course we're talking Esper Plainswalker. She is one of the most popular commanders in the Esper colors. I believe second or third on EDH rec as of recording. That is 1 black, 1 blue, and 1 white to get this 3 loyalty Plainswalker out. +1 ability, draw a card, then put a card from your hand on top of your library. -1, exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So she cannot exile herself, but she can exile other cards that you own. That may be important. Keep that noted in your head. And -6, choose left or right. Each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminatou the Fateshifter, controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. And of course, she can be your commander. So now I've got all that out of the way. The deck itself mostly synergizes with the +1 and the -1. The -6, not really. Although if we ever do use it, chances are that means the game is going a bit longer, and then we could start using the -1 after recasting, or more likely. Start using the -1 to get back some of our permanents. But our game plan focuses on the +1 and the -1, and I'll let you know where they each come in handy. Let's start with Alhamrit's Archive. This 5 mana legendary artifact says if you would gain life, gain twice as much of that life instead. And if you would draw a card, except your first one in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So yes, with Aminatou's +1, we draw 2 cards while this is out, put 1 back. So we can actually dig through our deck instead of, drawing a card then maybe putting the same one back on top. Arcane Signet did not exist when Commander 2018 came out. Welcome addition here. Coveted Jewel. Ever since I discovered this one, I've been finding all sorts of crazy uses, and this works amazing with her -1. So, cast Coveted Jewel, comes down, enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards. It taps, you can tap it to add 3 mana of any one color, and then Aminatou blinks it. Because the trigger is ETB, you get to draw 3 more cards. This enters untapped, and you get to tap it for 3 more mana. So it literally, it's draw 6 for free. And yes, if somebody attacks you and takes the Coveted Jewel, they get to draw 3 cards. They get to use this mana. If it comes back around to us, Aminatou can blink it back to our side of the table. So yeah, a perfect fit, especially with some of the combos that we have that we'll discuss later on. Gilded Lotus is also here. It doesn't draw us the cards, but that mana is handy. Mana Vault. 1 mana, taps for 3, but we have to pay 4 to untap it during our upkeep. And if we don't, at the beginning of your draw step, if this is tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. Obviously one of the more expensive cards in our format, but definitely handy here. Soul Ring, we all know it, we all love it. Running all 3 talismans, the Pain Talismans. Used to run the Signets here, but by running the talismans instead, I find it does a better job of fixing the colors. Yes, I'll take some pain if I tap these for colored mana, but it turns out to be a better fit for me. The Chain Veil is here as well, a very important piece. 4 mana for this legendary artifact. And at the beginning of your end step, if you did not activate a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker, you lose 2 life. We're always going to be activating loyalty abilities of our Planeswalkers. In addition to, we have double-digit numbers of Planeswalkers in this deck. Let's put it that way. And 4 and tap, for each Planeswalker you control, you may activate one of their loyalty abilities, and once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated. And interesting fact about it, that effect stacks, so if you manage to untap this and then activate it, say 3 times over the course of a turn, that means each Planeswalker will have at least 4 activations available to them. Lastly, Throne of Eldraine gave us an amazing tutor card in the Wishclaw Talisman. This 2-mana artifact enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it. We can pay generic mana and tap this to and remove a wish counter. Search our library for a card, put it into our hand, shuffle our library. An opponent gains control of Wishclaw Talisman, and we can only activate the tutor ability on our turn. Now, usually one of 2 things here happen. One is that we can use Aminatou's Blink ability to take the Wishclaw Talisman back from the opponent we gave it to, or we're tutoring for the card that ends the game. It's one of the 2. Going into our creatures now. Like Guard Mage, it's a 2/3 with flying. It's just here to help us block, really. When this enters the battlefield, gain 3 life and draw a card. And of course, a good blink target. Miria Shepherd. A huge, amazing ad. This one wins me games. White, and 5 for this 4/4 flyer, and the landfall ability is powerful. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we can return a non-land permanent card from our graveyard to our hand. If that land is a plains, we can return a non-land permanent to the battlefield instead. So of course we have some plains in the deck, and Aminatou can blink lands. So yep, we can always bring our other Planeswalkers back from the graveyard to the battlefield. Farfinder, this cute little fox, 1/1 vigilance, will help us get a basic land into our hand. Core Cartographer will help us get a Plains card onto the battlefield tapped. This includes Plains dual lands, so any of the dual lands that have the Plains type, we can bring it in. And of course, amazing blink target too. Reflector Mage, also an awesome blink target. Blue-white 1 for this 2/3 human wizard, and when this enters the battlefield, we get to return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That creature's owner cannot cast spells with the same name as that creature until our next turn. Sad Robot, of course. Amazing blink target because it can pull basics from our deck, put them onto the battlefield. When this eventually dies, we get to draw the card. Spark Double. This guy is amazing. This is amazing in the deck. So what happens with the Spark Double is that we can copy a Planeswalker. The Spark Double itself copies the Planeswalker, but it's not legendary, so we can have both Planeswalkers on the battlefield. So the ideal target, of course, is Aminatou. So with Spark Double in play, if we manage to get any extra activations on our Planeswalkers, and we essentially have infinite blink, so we can blink our lands to untap them, get infinite mana. So blink a land, so tap a land, blink it, comes back in untap. Blink the original Aminatou. Aminatou then blinks a land, which will give us more mana, and then we blink the Spark Double, comes back in, copies Aminatou again. Repeat. Infinite combo piece. Vital in an Aminatou deck, regardless of anything else, honestly. Also running the Sphinx of Utun, just a way to dig through the deck and find some cards. 7 mana for this 5/6 flyer. When this enters the battlefield, we get to Factor Fiction, basically. Look at the top 5 cards of our library. An opponent separates the cards into 2 piles, and we put the pile that we like into our hand, the other one into the graveyard. Moving on to enchantments with Copy Artifacts. This is a good way for us to ramp up because we can copy our mana rocks or any other pieces that may prove handy for us. Mirror Maid, same deal, copies an artifact or an enchantment. We are running Oath of Gideon as a way to generate some blockers for us. Planeswalkers don't defend themselves very well, so for 3 mana, this comes down, gives us 2 core ally creature tokens on the battlefield, both 1/1s. And then each Planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter. Oath of Jace lets us draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards when this enters the battlefield. At the beginning of our upkeep, we get to scry X, where X is the number of Planeswalkers we control. Oath of Liliana. When this comes down, each opponent sacrifices a creature. And at the beginning of each end step, if we had a Planeswalker come onto the battlefield under our control, we get a zombie. And then Oath of Teferi, most powerful of them all. Blue, white, and 3. When this enters the battlefield, we exile another permanent we control. Return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step, so slow blink as I like to call it. And we may activate the loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers we control twice each turn rather than only once. So, Oath of the Fairy, Spark Double, Aminatou, we go infinite. Another thing to note about all the oaths, they are all amazing blink targets for Aminatou as well. So if we need to have our opponent sacrifice more creatures, blink the Oath of Liliana. If we need more tokens, blink the Oath of Gideon. Need to filter through more cards, Oath of Jace, blink it. Teferi, of course, we're not going to blink because we're comboing off once this is down. But Teferi's presence is quite strong in this deck. Looking at M21's Teferi's Ageless Insight. This blue and 2 legendary enchantment says if we would draw a card, except the first one in each of our draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So much like Alhamid's Archives, +1 on Aminatou means we get to draw 2, then put a card back. One more blink target here in the Eldest Reborn. For 5 mana, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Chapter 2 is each opponent discards a card, and Chapter 3 is put a planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Creature or planeswalker, sorry. And we can let it run its course, or we can blink it and get repeated creature sacrifices and discards. Moving on to our instance, Anguish Unmaken exiles any non-land permanent. We lose 3 life. Totally worth that price. The original deck came with a lot of these miracle cards, where if it's the first card you draw in the turn, you can cast a spell by paying its miracle cost. So for example, instead of paying 6 mana for Banishing Stroke to put an artifact, creature, or enchantment on the bottom of its owner's library, it costs only a single white. And Aminatou can actually put these onto the top of our library for us quite easily. Some versions of the deck are heavily themed on the miracle. We do use it as utility. There's no reason for us not to, but we definitely don't lean into this too hard. Crush Contraband, exile an artifact, exile an enchantment. 4 mana instance, we're always going to have both targets in the format that we live in today. Despark, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Good for, mid-tier games. If you're running a super fast game, if your group is super fast, this may whiff for you, so do be careful. Disallow, one of the best counters in the game. Counter a spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Delvin's Veto, this spell cannot be countered and counter a non-creature spell. So just a powered up negate. Generous Gift, destroys any permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 elephant creature token. Ignite the Beacon. We get to search our library for up to 2 planeswalker cards, put them into our hand, and it's at instant speed. This is important. This is at instant speed. So we can actually hold up some counter magic, and if we happen to have 5 mana that we didn't spend, go get some planeswalkers. Kaya's Guile. I think this is a very interesting instant. For a black, a white, and 1 generic, we choose 2 of the 4 modes. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Exile all cards from each opponent's graveyard. Create a 1/1 black and white spirit creature with flying, or gain 4 life. Generally, we're using this for the first 2 modes. Although if you really want everything, we can always pay the Entwined cost and get all 4 modes. Sublime Epiphany. This is one I've been trying out. 6 mana. It's a little expensive for this, but you know what? Look at the modes. Look at what 6 mana gets us. Counter a spell, counter an activated or triggered ability, return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of a creature we control, or target player draws a card. So yes, there's actually quite a lot. 6 mana gets you a lot. We're usually anywhere between 3 and 4 modes when we cast this spell. Swords to Plowshares, exiles a creature. Note that I'm not running Path to Exile. Path to Exile, I don't know, I find that giving up that land these days is too high a price. So I don't think Path to Exile is as good now as it was, say, 2-3 years ago. 38 lands. We're running Esper, so we need all the mana sources we can get. So running all the appropriate pain lands, like Adarkar Wastes. Running the tap land Arcane Sanctum, because it gives us all our colors. Bojuka Bog, another way to exile graveyards. Castle Lockthwain comes in untapped if we control a swamp, and gives us another source of card draw if we need it. There's the Caves of Koilos. Command Tower. Glacial Floodplain. I'm running some of the Snow Jewels in this deck, and you'll see why shortly. Godless Shrine running the Shocks. Hollowed Fountain. Interplanar Beacon. Whenever we cast a Planeswalker, we gain a life. This taps for colorless, or we can pay 1 into this to get 2 mana of different colors that we can only use on Planeswalker spells. We have more than enough to choose from. 6 islands, 1 Karn's Bastion. A land that says pay 4, tap it to proliferate? Sure. New Bedalia. This is here for being able to tap for white and for the scry. 7 plains, 1 polluted delta. Go get an island or swamp card. So we can get our Snow Jewels, we can get our Shocks, whatever we need. Prairie Stream. Then this enters the battlefield. Tapped unless you control 2 or more basics. But it also has basic types on it, so I thought it was worth running. Snowfield Sinkhole. The Sunken Hollow. Running 6 swamps, 1 Temple of the False God. We're gonna get to those 5 lands. We're running more than enough lands to get to those 5 lands, even in Esper. Underground River. Watery Grave. And that gives us our 38 lands. Plainswalkers, running 11 Plainswalkers in addition to Aminatou. Starting with Vijani Steadfast, 4 mana, 4 loyalty. Until end of turn, up to 1 target creature gets 1/1, First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. Sure gives us a way to buff up our own life totals. -2, put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control, and a loyalty counter on each Planeswalker we control. Not on Vijani itself, but on the others. -7, if we ever get to the -7, we get an Emblem Whiff. If a source would deal damage to you or a Planeswalker you control, prevent all but 1. So if we do somehow get this to 7 loyalty and trigger the ultimate, our board is protected. Like us and our board are protected forever. Elspeth Sun's Champion. Definitely here for the -3, destroying all creatures with power 4 or greater. The +1 is put 3 1/1 white soldier tokens onto the battlefield. And the cool thing about the Planeswalkers is because Aminatou can blink the Planeswalkers, you can get multiple activations of your walkers that way. So it's not uncommon to say, use the -3 on Elspeth, blink her, and then put out some blockers. Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, 4 mana for this 4 loyalty Planeswalker. The 0 gives us a blocker, a 2/2 Knight Ally token, so sure, why not? A +1 is he turns into a 5/5 that can swing. So figured why not? Not really using the Anthem emblem. It's more for the 1 and the 0. Kasmina. Figured this is a great fit here. 4 mana for this 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Spells opponents cast a targeted creature or Planeswalker you control cost 2 more to cast. So it makes us a little more resistant to spot removal. In addition to that, the -2 is create a 2/2 wizard creature token, and then we get to draw, then discard a card. Liliana Vess. The perfect add here. 5 mana, 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, target player discards a card. Not really going to use that. She's here for the -2. Search your library for a card, shuffle it, put it on top. And guess what Aminatou can do for +1? Immediately draw that new card. Narset, part of our Veils. This is here to slow down our opponents a little bit. Blue, blue, and 1 for 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Each opponent cannot draw more than 1 card each turn. The -2 is also useful. Look at the top 4 cards of our library. Reveal a non-creature, non-land card, and put it into our hand. So gets us a little bit of card advantage also. And easy to blink as well. We run it down to, let's say we use her -2 twice. Aminatou can blink her, reset her to 5. Sorin Grim Nemesis. 6 mana, 6 loyalty, and one of the big win cons. So look at the +1 here. Reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converted mana cost. So using Aminatou, we can choose what card is on top of our library when we activate Sorin's +1. The fact that Sorin can also minus X to deal damage to a creature or planeswalker and gain us life, also useful. The -9 put a number of 1/1 black Vampire Knight tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield equal to the highest life total among all players. I've never used it. I don't think we need to use it, because when we go off, it's Sorin's +1 that wins us the game. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Bane of Standard in its time, blue, white, and 3 for loyalty planeswalker. Gets us some extra card draw, so draw a card and untap a couple of lands. -3, put a non-land permanent into its owner's library, third from the top. And the emblem, super powerful if we manage to get to it. Whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls. Teferi, Temporal Archmage. This is a more important combo piece in the deck. Blue, blue, and 4 for this 5 loyalty planeswalker. Don't really care about the +1. He's here for the -1. Untap up to 4 target permanents. That includes lands, that includes your mana rocks, especially the ones that tap for 2 or more mana. The idea here is that if Teferi, Temporal Archmage, and the Chain Veil, we can untap the Chain Veil, and if we untap enough lands and mana rocks to reactivate the Chain Veil, then we have infinite activations. That's what Teferi is here for, infinite activations of the Chain Veil. Tezzeret the Seeker. Excellent name, because that's what he's here for, seeking out some of our key artifacts. So the +1, also useful. Untapping 2 artifacts helps us ramp up. The -X, search our library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less. Put it onto the battlefield. So even as is, we pay the 5, we can just -4 right away to go get our Chain Veil. Or we can -1 to go get our Mana Vault. Whatever piece we're missing, we can get it. Venser the Sojourner. +2 is a slow blink for this 5 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker. Exile a permanent your own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. -1, creatures are unblockable. We don't typically use that. If we get this up to -8, whenever we cast a spell, exile a permanent. So here for the slow blink, it lets us defend our creatures, especially if we're going to board wipe. And we're going to be seeing a few examples of that shortly. Now that we've come to our sorceries. Call the Gatewatch. Search our library for a planeswalker card, put it in our hand. Damnation, about to get a reprint in Time Spiral Remastered, so more copies of this will be floating around. Devastation Tide. This is one that we can put back to the top of our library with Aminatou, and then use it to return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Final Judgment, exile all creatures. Simple as that, 6 mana, exile all creatures. Obsidat's Aid. 5 mana for a recursion spell seems expensive, but when you realize that it can get any permanent, so you can get lands, creatures, planeswalkers back onto the battlefield, I think that flexibility is worth the 5 mana here. Raven Form. Exile an artifact or creature, and its controller gets a 1/1 bird. We can pay for the 3 mana, or we can foretell it and then cast it on the cheap later on. Scheming Symmetry. 1 black. Choose 2 target players. One's going to be you, one's going to be an opponent. Search your library for a card, put it on top. And then with Aminatou, draw it and win the game, such as our plan. Search for Glory. This new piece coming from Kaldheim is excellent. Search our library for a snow permanent card, such as some of our lands, a legendary card, such as our planeswalkers or some of our key artifacts, or a saga card. We're not running any sagas, that's fine. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. You do get a little bit of life gain if you spend snow mana. Not a big deal. It's here as a tutor. Settle the Score. Exile target creature for 4 mana. Seems expensive. Put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. That's what you're paying for. Supreme Verdict. Can't be countered. Destroy all creatures. And Terminus. For 1 white mana, put all creatures on the bottom of its owner's libraries. You could cast it for 6 if you need to, or you can set it up with Aminatou and just, for 1 white, cast it and clear the board. And lastly, Wrath of God. Destroy all creatures, they cannot be regenerated. We don't run a lot of creatures, so we're going to blow up creatures. I used to run other Wraths that could destroy, artifacts or enchantments, but we run plenty of those, so I would rather keep them. And that is our updated version of Aminatou the Fateshifter. I hope you all liked this journey down memory lane. In the links below, I'm going to have the original deck list from episode 6, as well as today's deck list. And 25 minutes, so doing a little bit better than previous episodes, but I'll let you go here. And next time you see me, I'm going to be diving into something I've never really dived into before, EDH. Talk to you next time.